Welcome to It's a Woman's World. We have a great guest today, and I'm excited to have Karen with us. And our co hosts today are Susan Strauss and Beverly Crosby. You're in for a treat because Karen is the Star Tribune's newest, or one of the newest columnists. And as a journalist myself, I'm just excited to hear what she has to say about her new gig. So I'm going to start off by asking, how do you get your stories? Do you think of them yourself, or do people give you ideas?
Well, first of all, Barbara, I just want to thank you for inviting me to this show, and thanks for having me on. And where do I get my stories? That's such a good question, and it's something that a lot of people wonder. And the answer is I get them from all over the place. Usually just by talking to people, sometimes by reading the news, sometimes from social media, just many different places. And I'm gonna try to give you an example. So like Farm Fest is coming up, so I'll be going down to Farm Fest and kind of walking around talking to people. Last year, when I was at Farm Fest, I just happened to start talking to some pastors who were there from a school near the Twin Cities, and the pastors were all from Africa, and they had a really interesting take on agriculture and what they saw at Farm Fest. And so I interviewed them and ended up writing a column about kind of sharing their views. And it comes from, yeah, they just come from many different places. Normally, they are just ideas that I have myself. Nobody tells me what to write. I write my own stuff, what interests me, what I think will interest my readers. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I think Beverly has another interesting question too.
I do. Karen, tell us, just like a cake mix, there's certain ingredients that make it really good or not. What are the ingredients for a good story?
Well, um, all the I don't know that there's an exact formula. Like for me, it actually it's more instinctive than anything. If there's something that surprises me that I learn about, I like looking more into it, and chances are my readers will like hearing about it. If it's something that gives me new information that I didn't have before, if there's something that sheds light on something, if there's something that just like makes you feel, you hear about something, you just cheer inside, or it frightens you, or it gives you goosebumps. A lot of times you can just kind of rely on your own reaction to determine, will that be a good thing to write about? So yeah.
Susan.
I've done some publishing as well, and I always love it when I see the final product, and I like doing the research for it, but I hate doing the writing. And so it doesn't take much for me to get frustrated and find that I'm being challenged by such things as not synthesizing the research, or I read a sentence and it's like, oh, that's awful. How can I make it better? How do you, as a professional writer, deal with any of those kinds of process challenges? That's what I'm referring to them to. You may have a different term, but how do you deal with that? And you, particularly if you've got a deadline and you're just stuck and things that you're writing aren't up to par and you don't like the tone. How do you deal with that?
You delete everything and write over. My columns are 750 words. But honestly, I have done that a number of times, start writing something and it's like, I hate that. So I just delete it. I mean, I don't have the luxury of doing that many times, but just last night I was on deadline and eliminated about a paragraph and a half. I just didn't like what I'd written. I'm like, that's not the direction I want to go. So chop, there it went.
Oh, that's got to be frustrating.
Well, it's not. It's an opportunity to do it better. And I mean, you don't want to. a lot of times, like when I'm starting a story, I used to do this a lot more when I was first getting into journalism, is I would just write a bunch of words down, and just not censoring myself, just words. What do I think this story is about? Just keywords, basically. And then from that, I would pull together like, which ones seemed to make the most sense. And I'd craft a lead out of that. The lead is the first paragraph or two of a story. Um, and now a lot of it is just instinct. After you do something so much, like anything, it just kind of becomes second nature. But I mean, that's not to say that, like I said, I just those were further down in the story. It started going in a direction. I'm just like, I don't want to go there. It's just not appropriate for this story. It's not what I want to say. Um, so yeah, delete
Thank
You
it.
you.
know, Karen, one of the things that I've noticed as I'm a daily reader of the Star Tribune, and what I've noticed is of all the new columnists that the Star Tribune has hired in the past year, and there are several, I think that your columns produce the most feedback in letters to the editor. I would say that most of them are very positive, but every once in a while there's someone who takes issue with something you've written. How does that affect you, or does it affect you? And I personally think it's a huge compliment that that is the case.
I'm okay with people disagreeing with me. I see my columns not as like the be all, end all, to anything anybody would ever, any opinion anybody would have to say on the subject. It's kind of like a conversation. We're not going to agree with everything. And if somebody wants to write in, I'm like, yes, share your thoughts. If you disagree with me, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm not going to say I'm not wrong, because I'm wrong a lot. So yeah, just go ahead and write in. It's the people that are mean that can get to me, that and also are either intentionally full of disinformation, or they're just intentionally mean. Um, yeah, it's just those are not such fun people to deal with, and you just kind of have to write them off. I had one guy that was just tearing into me. He sent me an email, and at the very end, he made some comment about the Hortman's dog lying in state. He's like, "You people let a dog lie in state at the Capitol." I'm like, you know what? That's who you are. That's who this guy is. Like, he took offense at this beloved dog lying next to his humans. Like, what kind of a person would object to that? I mean, that just like told me exactly who I needed to know about, or what I needed to know about this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
So,
Karen, you mentioned something about when you first started as a journalist. My question to you is, what inspired you to go into journalism?
oh, that's another good question. So I loved writing from a very early age. When I was in second grade, I wanted to be an author. That was my goal in life, was to be an author. And I stuck with that for years. And when I was in, I think, junior high, I think it was 15, my mom she saw an opening at a newspaper in Wayzata. I grew up in Plymouth, and she brought me, to talk to the editor, and he happened not to be in when she brought me in. And I didn't drive, so I couldn't go out on assignments or whatever. But so I didn't end up getting that job. But you know, it just kind of started, it opened the door to that field. And we always had a newspaper growing up. We had the Star Tribune. My dad would bring it home, and we'd all fight over the funnies, and I just loved learning about things that were going on in the world. It was just endlessly interesting to read about what was going on.
Uh, Karen, how have you
So,
found
yeah.
social media affecting, well, we read about how it's affecting print, but particularly with the focus that you take in your articles, and I know it's a broad focus, but how has social media affected you now writing for a print publication?
Well, my stories get shared a lot more. It's easier to pass, something you read around to your friends and post them on different sites that you manage. And also it's a lot easier getting in contact with people. You learn about people that you wouldn't otherwise learn about. There are many Facebook pages I follow, and just in Minnesota, like community pages, community discussion pages. So a lot of times I don't write, but I like to keep tabs on what's going on around the state just to know what people care about. Uh, you know, so I think it's been pretty beneficial overall.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen. One of the things I've noticed is that you do cover quite a bit of the state. I also am interested in, so this is a twofold question. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you live, and how far afield do you drive to get your stories?
Okay. Well, and I'm having to polish my glasses here because they keep fogging up on me. So, anyway, I live in Ottertail County. So if you don't know where that is, it's about we're about 40 minutes north of Alexandria. And it is in the middle of nowhere. Can't see our neighbors, which is how we like it. I mean, no offense to, other neighbors we've lived by in the past, but it's just so nice to be able to look out our window and see, trees and farm fields, and we have some wildlife ponds on our property. And when I go out and my responsibility is for everything outside the metro. So greater Minnesota. And so, I mean, I've pretty much driven around the whole state a couple times. And I've traveled around Minnesota anyway, just, prior to taking this gig. I love Minnesota. I just adore Minnesota. I lived outside of the state for 10 years and I was so happy to come back. It's the best thing that I did was making the decision to come back to Minnesota. And when I came back, I lived in Bemidji. Ended up getting married, and my husband was from Ottertail County. So we lived in Bemidji for a while and then moved down here. So I do have, connections throughout the state. Um, and, I mean, we have this Minnesota Matters tour that we do in the spring, and it takes us, like I was in, Mankato and Wilmer and, down in the southeastern part of the state and up in Duluth and Grand Rapids and all over the place. So, but this is not something I do every day. There might be a month that goes by and maybe I'll drive once to Fergus Falls, and the rest of my columns will come, talking to people on the phone or over, Zoom or whatever. But yeah, I adore getting out on the road. I've been to Bird Island, if you guys know where that is. Yeah. And yeah, it's just like a really wonderful way to see the state and hear and meet the people that live in greater Minnesota, and just talk to them, get to know them.
I have a question. Karen, do you have a target audience or is your audience very broad?
Well, that is a good question. And that's one that I asked when they hired me. I said, who am I writing for? Am I writing for rural people, or am I writing for the Twin Cities? And they said yes. So I'm like, okay, so my audience is pretty much everyone. But obviously not everybody reads my columns. I mean, there are people who read the Star Tribune for the sports. There are people who read it just for I don't know, the classified ads. And my audience kind of depends on what I'm writing about. I was just writing about wake boats. And so it was really kind of aimed at people who own or drive wake boats. I felt that everybody should watch this video that the University of Minnesota has put together in their study on the destruction that wake boats cause to the lake beds and the plant life and the aquatic life. I mean, it's pretty dramatic. And so, yeah. But and a lot of times, my audience there are people who live in the Twin Cities. I hear back from a lot of city people who really want to know about greater Minnesota. They might come up here and vacation. They might just to them, Greater Minnesota is a place to relax, to have fun with family, to go boating or golfing, and they really don't know much about the lives of the people who live here year round. So I get messages from people saying that they really appreciate that, just seeing another viewpoint of what's happening in the rest of the state.
Do you have certain topics that you have more affinity to write about?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like to talk more about the people, like the pastors you mentioned that were from Africa, or do you like writing more? And I don't know if it's more, but when you think about writing about the aquatics and the boats, where do you tend to go, oh, good, I'm going to write about this? Is there something that is more of a interest or a turn on to you to write about than other things?
Well, I guess just viscerally, I love Minnesota lakes and rivers and open spaces. I'm a big fan of, environmental protection. And I think a lot of Minnesotans are, whether you're hunters or people who just like to recreate, or even people, I mean, a lot of people live out here because we love, just the nature, just hiking in nature or just being out in nature. So yeah, I think those kinds of stories always kind of like get me interested. I also adore people stories, like a good people story. There were floods down in southeastern Minnesota last year, and I interviewed a dentist and his one of his patients. Um, the dentist actually hauled the patient in by boat to get to the
Oh,
dental office because he had a real critical dental appointment that he couldn't miss. And so the dentist had waders on, and neither of them are very young guys, um, and just hauled the canoe in to the parking lot. And and they had this fun back and forth like for years prior involving a bottle of wine. And it's just like one of those gifts that wouldn't stop giving, they find these unique ways to anyway, so the patient had it, along with him in the canoe ride and gave it to the dentist uh and they passed
that'd
it on.
be fun.
Yeah, it was really fun just talking to them, just hearing about their story and the way they interacted with each other. You could tell they really had a lot of fun. So yeah, and then there are other topics. I think freedom of speech is another one. Freedom of the press is one that I care passionately about. And of course, the news media is really getting beat up nowadays. Uh, and I've always cared very passionately about the ability of people to speak their minds, um, and uh, and to do good journalism, and that's under threat. So that is another topic uh, that I'm passionate about. Um, yeah, so those are a few.
Thank you.
Yes, you and I have spent our careers asking questions, and I was just thinking, is there a question that you'd like to ask either us or our viewers that would make a difference for you in perhaps future columns?
Oh, well, what would you like to know about Greater Minnesota? Yeah, what would you like me to write about? What do you want to hear? Do you have questions about Greater Minnesota?
Very good. I think I also own property in Otter Tail County, and I always brag about the fact that Otter Tail County has more lakes than any other county in the country. So I think that's a proud fact.
There are certainly lots and lots of lakes in Otter Tail County, and we are actually quite a large county.
Yes.
That helps. I think we're about maybe twice the size of Douglas County.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are definitely beautiful lakes here.
Karen, excuse me. Sorry about that. I find that I'm very productive in the early morning hours or late at night when everything is nice and quiet. The world is sleeping. What about you? Do you have a favorite time or place that you like to write?
I am a night owl. Yep, I have been since I was a kid. My son is the same way. And my husband likes to go to bed by 10 usually. So, it has been like late at night. Uh, I'll sit on my couch and I'll write my own stuff. My work stuff I've got to get done earlier in the day. But now my son likes to be up too. So it's not as quiet as it used to be. Like he'll come down, he'll ask me if I can rub his back, or he'll just
Oh.
come and sit in a chair and brush his teeth, or which I love having him down. And it's just a little bit different. So,
What about the environment that you work in?
oh yeah. Well, I get to work from home. So I work out of a 100-year-old farmhouse that was built by my husband's great 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 grandparents. And it hasn't really been updated a lot. So there's no central air. We have window units. We don't have enough plug-ins, electrical outlets,
Mhm.
not enough closet space. Um, it's just a real, but it has like all original old wooden floors, all the original wooden trim, um,
Mhm.
and doors. And we are, like I said, in the middle of nowhere. So, we can just walk down the gravel roads. Um, there are cars, like some cars that go by, but not very many during the day. So it's pretty quiet. A lot of birds outside. It's so interesting to go outside. I just love. I was thinking, it's better than social media. Just to go outside. We had some swallows build nests under the eaves of our garage,
Yeah.
and just to watch the parents flying back and forth, and those little ones kind of poking their heads up and getting fed, and just like just nature talks. All you have to do is like get out there and listen to it and watch it.
So when you talk about being surrounded by nature and about watching the parents come to feed the little ones, is that something that you write about your environment and stepping out the door of your old home and seeing the juxtaposition between this 100-year-old home and birds feeding their little ones? I mean, do you write about that?
I haven't. I think I may have dropped clues in from time to time. I've written about hay baling, like when my husband does small square bales, and what it's like to ride the hay rack late at night with the moon overhead, and uh but I haven't written so much just about our home and where we live. Because I guess it's like and I'm not saying that I wouldn't. Um, Sometimes the things that are closest to you, you wonder if people will be interested in them, you know, um, just because I love something, will my readers love it? What do you think? I mean, would you be interested in reading a column like that?
Personally, I would. I like nature. So, I mean, I would think that what you observe in watching these parents, that it could be reflected to, do we do that as parents, or what can we learn from these birds? How does it make you feel? Does it make you feel serene? Does it make you think, oh, I maybe could have done some of that as a parent myself? Or look at how attentive they are. Look at how often they leave the nest. And things that maybe your readers wouldn't even consider, but you see it because of your career and writing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And I think that for me as a reader, it would draw me into your environment and I would feel like I would actually be there, maybe even being able to smell the fresh air and just
mm-hmm,
I would feel relaxed. So it would draw me in.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, maybe
Yes.
I'll have to think of writing one.
Yeah. I think it also is interesting from the standpoint of it lets the reader get to know you a little bit more when you write with that perspective. I was wondering if you would share with us maybe some of a couple of the pros and a couple of the cons of your current gig. What do you love about it, and what do you wish would be different?
Hmm. Well, let's see. The pros I can think of more quickly than the negatives, although there are negatives. Um, well, the pros are that I get to write about this state that I love. I
Mm.
mean, it just still boggles my mind that I get paid for this. I mean, that is just so amazing. And I can go places and talk to people and hear their stories and share them and share my opinions. I mean, as a columnist, I get to have opinions. They pay me. They want me to have a perspective and a point of view and opinions. And like, really? And so there's just like this amazing, and I just and here is like one of the negatives or like one of the challenges. It's like am I doing it justice? There's always
Mhm.
this thought, it's like there's so much out there that needs to be told. Am I doing it justice? If I pick one story or one idea, I have to say no to something else. And
Mm.
it's like, am I wise enough to pick, the ones that really matter? I worry about that. So that
You
is.
know, Karen, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I've just noticed we're out of time. My goodness, this has gone so fast. I could probably ask you another half hour or hour or 2 hours of questions. So I apologize for interrupting. Karen Tolkinen, it has been a joy to have you on. It's a Woman's World. Thank you, Beverly. Thank you, Susan. And thank you for watching It's a Woman's World.
Back when I was going into journalism, it's changed quite a bit since then. I was going into journalism in the 1990s, and it was very traditional. Go to journalism school, work for your student newspaper, get your clips, send them off, get hired, hopefully. Nowadays, there are opportunities that didn't exist back then. Journalists can go the traditional route. They can work for newspapers or magazines or TV stations or radio, but they can also set up their own Substack accounts. They can develop their own followings. They can get paid directly. They don't have to deal with the same advertising pressures that people have had to deal with in the past. But one thing doesn't change, and that is the need for good quality journalism. You need to know where to find solid, reputable sources. And I still say go to journalism school. You'll learn a tremendous amount there.